Okay, so today we are covering this topic of trying to distinguish between wants versus needs and the impact that has on our relationships. So, what do you think is the number one cause of breakdown in relationships? Let's get a read of the room. Yes, gentleman at the back. Nice and loud.
Communication.
Communication is the number one cause of breakdown in relationships, okay?
Ego.
Ego, okay?
Expectation.
Expectations, all right? Misunderstandings. Not listening, okay?
Unmet needs.
Unmet needs, okay. Unmet needs, communication, not listening, ego. All of these are core aspects of a relationship. With unmet needs and relationships, there can often be, and this is where the miscommunication, misunderstanding, not meeting expectations or ego or even the unmet needs, this is where often people will say that there's a problem in the relationship because the other person is not meeting my needs, because the other person is not meeting my expectations, because the other person is not effectively communicating, or the other person is not listening, or the other person has ego. Anyone here familiar with saying one or all of those sentences? I think if we're honest with ourselves, every single one of us has experienced at least one of those, or thought one of those things. Doesn't matter if it's what type of relationship it is. It could be with your parents, with your kids, with your friends, with your partners. There's going to be some when we are feeling like a relationship has become difficult. All of those things that you've raised have come up for us, but we've generally gone, okay, this other person has the issue. Actually, what we generally find is that the biggest, and most common thing we find in relationships which are breaking down, or where there's problems with arguments, or there's lack of communication or unmet needs, is that the person's failing to do those things for themselves. They have a clear misunderstanding of what their needs are versus their wants. And they're often chasing after their wants and not meeting their own needs. And so this often leads them to the most frustrated state of mind. And when we're in a frustrated state of mind, are we the most effective communicators? Are we the most effective listeners? Are we the most effective when we're frustrated? No. We are least effective when we're frustrated. So what I wanted to do is just spend a little time today looking at our sense of identity, looking at what the difference is between a need and a want, and how this might relate to us as an individual, first of all, before we take it out into our relationships. Okay? So I'm going to put up something that actually probably many of you in this room will be familiar with. This is, there's a psychologist who in the early 1900s put together what's known as Maslow's hierarchy of needs. He specifically uses this word need. And when we say the word need is something that is pretty universal. Wouldn't you say that needs are universal, right? And that's something that strikes me whenever I look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Actually, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, one of our saints and teachers, he also goes into a hierarchy of needs. He goes beyond this, he goes much deeper. He moves forward from the point of self-actualization into the different layers of Krishna consciousness, but he also speaks about all of these other needs. So these needs are universal. Okay, that's one thing I think we can all agree on, that when there's a need, there's a universality to it, right? For example, in your household, there'll be certain things that every single person in that house needs, right? And that's where you unite. When you're looking at needs, people unite, isn't it? If we look at all of these physiological needs, so air, water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing, reproduction, how many people come together for physiological needs? We all come together as a community. If we see someone or a community struggling with meeting those needs because of war or natural disaster, we all feel like we can relate because it's a need. It doesn't matter what your religion is, your caste, color, creed. oh, wow, I want to help. This is a need. This is a need because I can relate. When it comes to wants, there's less relatability. Have you noticed that? Right? So with wants, there can be, anybody here cook for their family? Some of you may have to cook 3 different meals for your different family members because everybody's wants are different. But their needs are the same in that they all need to eat. Okay, so you will have to cook, but you may have to cook something different to meet their wants. So that's one of the key things between difference between a need and a want, is that with wants, there's so much variety. But with needs, there's pretty much a universality. So here, Maslow addresses the needs of the human condition. Okay, when we're looking at Krishna consciousness, we're looking at the needs of the spiritual sense of self as well as the human sense of self. But here Maslow's nicely broken it down. And there's a reason there's a hierarchy, and we'll go into that in a moment. When our physiological needs are met, when the body feels, satisfied and safe, then we go into more personal security and the security of the quality of our life. And this is, our physical safety, employment, resources, health, property. This defense, right? Prabhupada always talks about eat, sleep, reproduce, and defend. So safety needs are there. Then once we feel safe, right? When we're fed and watered and we feel safe, what happens? We want to feel a sense of community, a sense of belonging, friendship, intimacy, family, a sense of connection. It's natural. Now think about it. For every single person in this room, if you're hungry, are you thinking about connecting with others? No, you're thinking about you need to eat something. If you feel threatened, when you feel unsafe, do you ever feel like giving someone a hug unless you feel safe with them? Unless you know that person can give you safety. If you're feeling unsafe in yourself, you're not going to hug that person. So do you see how safety and physiological needs, they come first. They're basic. Then our sense of love and belonging comes. Okay? So again, love and belonging is a need, it's a human need, but it comes after the ones that are prior to it, our basic needs are met. Then we've got esteem, our own sense of self-worth, our own sense of value, our own sense of identity. And Maslow's put it down as respect, self-esteem, status, recognition, strength, freedom. But the source of these don't necessarily have to come from outside. People assume that this has to come from outside because if you look at the other 3, love and belonging, safety needs, physiological needs, they're usually coming from outside. But again, do you see, even with esteem, there can be with the needs, everybody has the need to feel like they exist, the need to feel like they are recognized, because our existence, especially in our human experience, seems to go hand in hand with being recognized. Right? How many of us here have fallen into the trap that we believe that the only work we do is the work that is seen by others? And I'll give you an example that might make it clear for you. Some of you do a lot of things in your own time, private time, looking after so many people, and nobody has a clue. You don't even accept it for yourself or recognize that you do so much for others. And you count your activities of the day just based on what's in your diary that is publicly seen. You don't credit yourself with probably about 70% of what you do, because we have such a culture of, I'm only doing that which is validated and seen by others. And so we end up living these lives which are so busy, and they're busy, filled with activities where we're trying to get recognized, because there is a need for esteem, but so much of our esteem lies in other people's hands. And then last but not least, but at the top of this hierarchy is self-actualization, the desire to become the most that one can be. And the most that we can be is very dependent on what and who we think we are, isn't it? If we think that we are connected to a lineage of millionaires, we will think the most we can be is a multimillionaire. If we think we are connected to a lineage of very beautiful people, we'll also strive for that beauty. If we understand that we are more than this body and mind and what society sees of us, we will also strive. That will be what self-actualization means for us. So becoming the most that we can be, a lot of it is down to what we understand about ourselves. Now there's a reason there's this hierarchy, but the way these things impact us and our relationship with these things changes depending on where we are. So if we look at the 4 at the bottom, If you notice that as your physiological needs are met, as your safety needs are met, esteem, loving and belonging, your motivation to fulfill those things reduces. You can only eat so much, you can only sleep so much, right? You can only drink so much, you can only, there's only so much you can do for your safety, right? You hanker for it less, in one sense. Now someone's probably sitting in the audience going, no, but mode of passion, if you work in the mode of passion, it makes you hanker for more. Yes, that's there, but this is where we see the difference between understanding things from a spiritual perspective and just a psychological one, right? But these last four are deficiency needs, okay? I don't have, that's why I need it. This is not something I can provide for myself, it needs to come from somewhere else. Yeah, so it's a deficiency need. So, and we're all going to be have different variables in terms of where our line sits before we lose motivation, okay, as our needs are met. Some of you will sit here and, you maybe don't have so many physiological needs, but you may have more self-esteem needs. Others will have more physiological needs and less self-esteem needs. But you look at something like self-actualization being the most that we can be, and especially as we go more into the spiritual paradigm, our motivation increases as our needs are met, because it's a being need. It's a need of existence, because existence is inherent to us, right? The need to be. Part of our need to be valued by others is tied into, we think that because someone else sees me, therefore I am. Notice that saying, I think, therefore I am. But most people walk around with, others see me, therefore I am, right? How many of us feel like we're doing nothing unless somebody else values it or somebody else sees it? And the modern culture that we have, where our sense of contribution to society is based on likes and follows and recognition, it feeds that even more. And it's that's not, I don't think any generation is independent of that any longer. Everybody's been influenced by it to some degree, if not directly, indirectly. But actually when we self-actualize, so that sense of being comes from somewhere independent of the human sense of self, then the more we exist in that space, the more our motivation increases, because that is real being. And when we talk about this in terms of wants versus needs, we are generally looking at the four major aspects of our sense of self, right? Four major aspects. We all have a physical self. Doesn't really need explaining. We all have a physical self, right? We all have a psychological self. Our idea of what kind of a person we are. So our personality, our character, our self-esteem, who we think we are. And then that brings us also on to our social sense of self, who other people think we are. And that is often based on our roles, on our relationships, our functions and wealth. So this Maslow's hierarchy of needs can become a hierarchy of wants based on how we navigate our psychological and physiological and social self, and to what degree we connect with the essential or spiritual self, because this is who we are independent of the physical self, the personality and roles in society. So why am I, some of you are sitting there thinking, okay, we talk about the soul, we talk about the body, we talk about the mind a lot in the Krishna consciousness talks, in these talks of bhakti. The reason it's important to almost go back to this very fundamental understanding that we are not only these bodies and minds, we are not only members of society, but there is our, full integrated self is, and our most alive self is our spiritual sense of self. Is because how much time in a day do we spend thinking in that way? Very little. People listen to a class. How many of us walk away and we just go back to our day-to-day life? So we need to repeatedly be reminded, okay, of who and what we actually are, because our society around us is designed to make us forget. Because our society around us is designed to make us focus on psychological, physiological, and social needs and wants. Okay? Does that make sense? Think about everything that is advertised, everything that's sold. What is the biggest trick a salesperson, or biggest strategy and most commonly used and effective strategy a good salesperson has up their sleeve? Anyone here work in sales?
Exaggeration.
Exaggeration. There's something more than that.
To make you think that you need what they're showing.
Absolutely. To make you think that you need what they're trying to sell you. Okay? They make you want it to a point where you think you need it. And how do they do that? How do they tend to do that?
They make themselves look really good. And in the same way that a beautiful woman is on posters for cars and she's got absolutely nothing to do with the car, because actually you're looking at the person. Like,
Okay.
there's a new advert for, I think, plant-based milk or something, and 80% of the poster is just a really beautiful woman, and the actual milk is just like in the corner.
I mean, who wants to look at a cup of milk? Right? Okay, so they make it attractive. What else? Anyone else? Put your hands up, please. Everybody here has bought something they didn't need and thought they needed it, but actually they just wanted it. So what else?
Conditioning. Conditioning of the mind that you must have it.
Okay, so how do they do that though? How do they condition your mind into buying something that you didn't want until they actually showed it to you?
Like Apple, for example, have this thing of they'll create a problem for you based on your current living condition.
Yes.
You believe that you have this problem that wasn't originally a problem, and then sell you the solution.
Wonderful. Manipulation 108. Okay? They create a problem or point out a problem or make you think you have a problem that you don't have and then sell you the solution. And if that doesn't work, the most basic trick in the book, repetition, repetition, repetition. And this is where our needs can very quickly get buried with our wants. Yeah? How elaborate can the need for food become? How expensive can the need for food become? Only as expensive as we want it to. How elaborate can the need for safety become? Only as much as we want it to. How big can the desire, for connection become? Only as big as we want it to. What influences our wants? What we expose ourselves to. How big can our desire for esteem get? Only as big as we want it to. And what influences our wants? It's what we hear. Right? If we're honest with ourselves, there's many of us who have a dialogue in our minds of what we need right now. There was a slide up before, the questions on determining your needs, right? What do you need right now? Can we... who has the slide? Did somebody have that slide?
It's on my
Is it on your computer? Can you just read out the first question for me? Is that okay? No, that's okay. That's okay. The reason I want it up is I actually want you to answer one of those questions. Because I read those questions, I thought, those are really good questions. But how are people there discerning their needs from their wants? Like, what questions are you asking us? No, I'll just read one of them out. If you can just show me, that would be great. Okay. Actually, these are really very good goal-setting questions. So I'm not going to use one of these. I'm going to ask my own one to all of you. I want everybody to just, on your piece of paper, on your phone, answer this question. Right now, what need is most alive for you? It doesn't matter where it sits in Maslow's hierarchy. It doesn't matter whether it's in your physical self, your psychological self, or social self. Right now, what do you feel is your number one need that you feel is really causing you a lot of distress? It's causing you a lot of distress. Okay, an unmet need that you just feel, I really need this. Be honest. It's very easy for us to go, no, I'm actually pretty satisfied. Especially when we're in spiritual communities, we like the idea of being the person who's satisfied. Sometimes we lie to ourselves. If you're chanting and praying and your mind is not completely absorbed and satisfied in chanting Krishna's names, it's likely your mind is somewhere else. And it's likely your mind is thinking about something that you think you need. Even if you have a need to avoid it. So it could be a person, okay? If your need is coming up as, oh, I need to avoid this person, okay, but what is that person bringing up for you that they're, threatening to take away from you or not give you, that has become, and that identifies our need as well. I want to just be very clear, please write it down, because when we take something out of our mind, see, the mind is very subtle. Thoughts and feelings are very subtle, and so they're difficult to control. When we put it on paper or on a screen, we bring it into the physical realm. When we bring something into the physical realm, it's much easier to control. When we just do it in our head, difficult to control, it tends to dissipate, and it's very hard for us to action it. So please borrow a pen and paper from someone next to you, or just pull out your phone, open the note page, open a WhatsApp message to yourself, and write down right now, what need do you have? What is really frustrating you? They feel like, if I don't have this met, or if I had this met, it would be so good for me. Okay. I want you to now identify for yourself, where did that come from? Where did that need come from? What tells you that you need it? And is it a need or a want? Or is it both? That there's a fundamental part of it that's a need, but it's covered with a want. So I'll give you an example. You might need transport. And you're saving up like anything because you want to get the next, I don't know, sports car, or, money to make your car more sporty, whatever it is. The need is that you need transport. The want is that you want it to look a particular way. Does that make sense? It could be in your relationships. And when you've done that, I want you to turn to the person next to you. Yeah, you know what? There's no change when we just do things on our own. Or there's no change, that's a bit harsh. There's less change when we do things on our own, and we can amplify that change, just like we amplify the thought process by putting it on paper. When we then vocalize it and we share it with someone, we literally drop karma. Okay, we literally drop karma. So if you feel shy, maybe what you've put on your paper is extremely personal. Maybe you can share something else with the person next to you. But if you can, be as open as possible with your need, and how you've distinguished what aspect of it is a need and what aspect of it is a want. Get out there, vocalize it, talk to each other. I'll give you 5 minutes. And how you came to that conclusion. Okay, thank you. Right. Anybody want to share, like what came out of your discussion that you found helpful? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, two very different experiences. Drishti. Oh, she doesn't want to mention it, so I'll just talk about mine.
Okay.
So for me, I mentioned to Drishti career fulfillment, where I've applied for a leadership role on 7 occasions over the past 6 years, shortlisted 5 times and lost out on each occasion, taken feedback, action feedback, lost out again. This time for 2 roles that went to 2 people with less than 3 years experience, whereas I thought a decade. So 2 people with 2 years and 9 months. That was a big frustration. And I had to have a deep think whether my frustration is out of ego or out of fairness and justice, and I spoke to other people about it.
Yeah.
Spiritual people. And they said you need to have the courage. And this is out of fairness and ego. There has to be a point where you have this, cannot keep smiling and say, yes sir, no sir, feedback's good sir. That you need to take some action. And that's what I'm trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
I have 2.5 decades in my field. I'm a university professor, and I want to make a bigger impact
Mm.
of stuff that I've done on a small scale, on a much larger scale. And I mean, the irony to all of this is, from an egotistic perspective, I was awarded Academic of the Year by students and Academic of the Year by colleagues as well this year. So it's painful.
Mm. Mm. So yours relates to a need to self-actualize on your purpose as a human being, which is a really important and valuable thing for most, that we feel purposeful in this world. But also from the way you're speaking, you also recognize it's one aspect of your self-fulfillment. Thank you for sharing that. That's very helpful, and for also distinguishing the need versus the want aspect of it and trying to figure that out. Anybody else want to share? Go ahead. Can someone pass the mic?
Okay, so mine was good relationships.
Okay. Did you pick a particular one, or you were just looking at all of them?
My son.
Okay.
Basically, it's generation gap,
Mm.
and our relationship seems to be drifting away. Sorry.
It's okay. It's okay.
I'm into spiritual, and he's very sporty. So he keeps telling me, Mom, you don't have any interest what I do. Sport, but I say, I've gone into the spiritual side, and you haven't. So there's a difference between me and you, which we come from an understanding. And I think I need to be like, every time I come to this, I feel there's like something is pulling me to come here.
Mm. Mm. So you have a clear need to connect. You have a clear need to connect with your spiritual self, with God. You have a clear need also to connect with your son. You want to continue nourishing yourself, but you also want to please your son. So did you have in your discussion have any thoughts with where the two could come together?
Yes, because when you asked us what's things, I said misunderstanding. I think we both misunderstand each other as well,
Mm-hmm.
and he doesn't understand me, and I don't take time to understand his needs either. So I think there's.
I mean, what you just said there, taking time to understand each other. You have the cognitive ability to understand each other's needs. You have the emotional ability. You've been in each other's lives since the day he was born.
Yes.
But you're not taking the time.
Yeah, that's what he wants, because he's, you rush things, and you always go, when I do my job, obviously, he sees my big feedback. He always doing that. He always reading, like, Bhagavad Gita or Bhagavatam. But you never have time for me, so how do I sort of come round and have time for him as well as my spiritual life?
So this is really boils down to an issue of prioritizing your time, because we can't have it all, right?
Yeah.
And so we prioritize our time and we prioritize our activities in that time. So this is what's important about these discussions. We can have so many needs and so many wants, but we have to be able to prioritize, because if we don't prioritize them, then we end up actually wasting our time on difficult emotions. Your feelings are valid, they're very strong, and they're understandable. But when feelings and emotions are strong, they take up a lot of time, and they can get us busy doing actually nothing about the actual problem, right? When you actually know what the solution is, he's reading your spiritual activities as what takes you away from him. And so anyone, why would they go to the activities that they think takes away the person they love the most? So maybe that's what you can look at, is how you prioritize your time in such a way that you can give him the time to understand his needs, and he will do the same for you. It's a reciprocal thing. You're blessed that your son wants to. Make that time. He could have said, get lost, I don't want to know. He's saying, make time. Yeah. Make time. So it's beautiful. You have a good reason to smile.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's have one more before we move into the next. Thank you. Next section. Who's got something they'd like to share? Our marketing expert here at the back.
So it's not mine personally, but just as a general topic, because I think it's applicable to everyone, whether they say it or not, money. Money is a need in the sense that bills have to be paid, food is needed, car, transport, like you said, your basic needs need to be met with finance. But I think it can be quite difficult for people to understand the difference between want and need when it comes to money. So I think it would be interesting to hear your take on something like that.
I mean, when it comes down to money, and this is, money is a power. It's a resource. It's actually a very low-grade power because it only deals with the material and it deals with very gross material. It is the lowest form and actually the most inferior manifestation of Lakshmi Devi. It's when we don't see her in her most opulent form. I mean, Lakshmi Devi's got so many opulences. Money is just, it's the currency of the unintelligent. And we are unintelligent when we get caught up in money because it only buys us very temporary things. And it's very easy for our needs and wants to get mixed up. Because like we've all agreed, needs are universal. The wants are the overlay, right? The overlay that is sold to us, okay, by what we expose ourselves to. We never want something we haven't been exposed to. If you haven't been exposed to something, you will not have a desire for it. That's why repetition in changing our desires works so well. There are people in this room, all of us, we're wearing something today that we wouldn't have worn maybe 5 years ago or 10 years ago or 15 years ago. Or we've got our hair a particular way or our beard a particular way. Or, so there's something we've got that we wouldn't have maybe 5 years ago. Oh, that's so weird. Why would I do that? Why would I wear that? So a lot of our needs and wants, and we've been, using this whole time, are filtered through what? Our mind. Yes? Our mind is such an important aspect for ourselves to understand. Because when we don't understand our own mind, we get pulled from pillar to post. So there is understanding the mind just generally as a mind, because everybody has a mind. And then there's understanding our own mind. Okay? So let's just look at let's just go back to basics with the mind. What is it that the mind, what are the powers of the mind? Okay? The mind is the home of human desire. Okay, the mind is not the seat of spiritual desire. Spiritual desire sits in the soul, but the mind is the home of human desire. Everything we think that we are, that we want, that we need, comes from here. It comes from our mind, isn't it? But all of those desires, okay, all of those desires come from what we are exposed to. Every single one. Exposure always precedes desire. That is a fact. If you ever find yourself wondering, why am I so intensely desiring this? And you want to get a handle on it, just pause for a minute and say, where on earth did this come from? And it's likely our strongest desires have either come from one place repeatedly, or they've come from many, many places repeatedly, right? So we look at our society that we live in. Our society sells us, westernized capitalistic society, okay? It sells us an ideology which really prioritizes bodily and social and psychological needs to a point where it completely ignores the spiritual aspect, completely. Our education system is designed like that. Our work system is designed like that. Family education is designed like that, okay? Everything, the clothes we wear, the food we eat, it's all designed to just nourish the temporary aspects of the self. So yes, the power of the mind is that it's the home of human desire, okay? It is also, and therefore, the seat of intention. Because the minute a desire manifests, what do? We think about it, we imagine it, we contemplate it, we develop feelings, in whichever order that you do it. Sometimes people feel something first before they think about it. So then it becomes the seat of our human intention, and so it becomes the beginning of your future. Because our intention is the seed of our future. Yes, wherever we put our intention, we then, what follows after intention? Action, doesn't it? I mean, that sounds pretty cool. Wow, the mind's amazing. It's the seat of my desires. I can think, I can feel, I can contemplate. It's the seat of my intention. It is the beginning of my future. Does that give you confidence in the mind? Just hearing that, doesn't it give you confidence in the mind? If someone said to you, here, look, I've got this, it will be the seat of your desires. You can think, feel, contemplate, you can set your intentions and you can create the future that you want. Here's the beginning of your future. Be like, yeah, I'll have one of those, thank you very much. Right? So we put so much faith in our mind. We put so much faith in our mind. But there's something else that the mind does. Because it is the seat on the home of human desire, it also does a few other things. Whilst contemplating the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment for them, and from such attachment, lust develops, and from lust, anger arises. This is Krishna talking about advertising 108. Okay? He says, what is he telling us here? You know, when we're exposed to something, what are we exposed to? We are exposed to objects of the senses, right? We are generally enticed into, you need or want this because it will satisfy taste, touch, sound, smell. You know, one of these. And your hearing, all of these. Why? Because we see our seat of ourself as basically what we experience through these five senses, right? If we can experience it through the five senses, it must exist. Right? So while contemplating the objects of the senses, because that is what we do, we generally, when you're contemplating when you did your exercise on your need and want, okay, and distinguishing them, you are contemplating, and you are contemplating the impact it will have on how you feel about yourself, your emotional space, what activity you'll be doing, how your different senses will be engaged, what you'll be looking at, what you'll be listening to, what you'll be speaking about, you know. When you were talking about, you know, becoming taking a leadership role, you would have, part of that would have included contemplating the objects of the senses, right? So what happens when we contemplate something, for it to form into an intention, okay, there has to be some attachment to it. What does attachment mean? It means we've given it value. We don't get attached to anything unless we give it value. Isn't that right? Right. Why is it that it is upsetting when we don't get what we've contemplated? Because we've formed an attachment to it. And attachment is very restrictive. Okay? There's a difference between relationship and attachment. I can have a relationship in the sense, I'm not talking like a human relationship. I can have a relationship with this phone, right? I can pick it up, put it down, I can use it, I can, you know, put it away, I can do so many things. I can relate to it. That's a relationship. If I'm attached to it, it becomes now restrictive. If it's attached to my hand, it now becomes part of me. It becomes part of my identity. This hand is basically useless now, right? Just because I've become attached to the phone rather than relating to the phone. So whilst contemplating the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment, right? It becomes important, and then it becomes integrated into our sense of self. I am nothing without this. I have a problem unless I have this. Yes, like you were talking about, you know, salespeople will create a problem and then give us a solution. So this is the nature of material energy. Material energy was designed to make us forget who we are, but also give us a way to remember who we are. Both things. It's the problem and the solution. But it just depends on whose voice you're listening to. So Krishna gives us how to use it as a solution. Okay? So attachment develops attachment for them. And from such attachment, lust develops. What is lust? It's what about me? In all of your relationship challenges, in the most difficult times, every single one of us would have heard ourselves ask, what about me? Even if we didn't say it out loud, what about me? Isn't it? What about me? If we're honest, what about me? That is the voice of lust. The voice of love is, what about you? Okay, so this voice that develops lust. Attachment creates lust. Because the more restricted we are, the more vulnerable we are. The more dependent we are, the more vulnerable we are. It is a dependent situation to be in bodily concept of life. You know why? Because the bodily concept of life ends. We're not used to ending because that's not our natural state. Where our time is running out, we already feel vulnerable. And then we cling to anything that makes us feel like we exist. So when we contemplate these objects of the senses, they make us feel like we exist. I am because I have. I am because I can do. I am because you believe what I do. I am because you see what I do. I am because you value what I do. Whether it's societal, psychological, or biological. And then the what about me arises from that. And what happens when the what about me is not met? Or even the what about me is threatened? That you might not get it. Or you already have it and it's going to be taken away and it won't stay. What happens? Whether it's your beauty, whether it's your status, whether it's your wealth, whether it's your occupation, even your purpose in this world, at some point will be threatened. So lust arises, doesn't it? What about me arises. What happens when we're threatened? We get frustrated. Frustration is the root, basic, most rudimentary type of anger. It's a word we use when we don't want to actually go, actually, I'm angry. So I'm frustrated, I'm annoyed. I found myself doing that yesterday, telling someone, I'm not angry, I'm annoyed. Wow, isn't that anger? Isn't not being annoyed anger? Yeah, it actually is. It's a low-grade anger. It's not raging anger. It's not, volatile anger. But being annoyed is a type of anger. And what happens when anger arises? What did we say? What did we open this session with? Frustration. And you all agreed what frustration is not a great place to make any decision. Yes? So if I now tell you that this lust, what does Krishna say? The senses, mind, and the intelligence are the sitting places of this lust, this attitude of what about me, which veils the real knowledge of the living entity and bewilders him. Okay, so here we are. Here's my amazing mind from where your human future begins. Oh, but your mind has this thing that it's always going, what about me, what about me, what about me? Now, do you want it? Do you want your mind in that state of mind where it can contemplate, it can think, feel, it can desire, it can set intention, it can be the beginning of your future. But its undercurrent is what about me, what about me, what about me? Do you still want it? No? Why? Why don't you want it?
Don't want to deal with that.
You don't want to deal with the what about me?
Yeah.
Why?
It takes up too much more time.
Takes up your time. It's time consuming, isn't it? What about me? What about me? What about me? Anyone else?
It's restless and it's too noisy.
Yes.
And it's not ready to absorb, take new things.
Yes.
It is just going into that vicious circle. Because you just have to clear that particular part. If you want something new, you just have to get off, similar to like a spring clean. Okay, clean the thoughts.
Can we give him the mic?
Give yourself time.
Beautiful. Okay, thank you. I mean, that was amazing. Thank you for explaining it so well. It keeps your mind so busy and cluttered, you have no space to hear anything. Who's been in this situation in their relationships where their mind has been busy and cluttered with what about me so much that they can't hear what the other person's saying? Be honest. I mean, I'd be amazed if every single person in this room does not put their hand up.
Every single argument ever.
Every single argument ever is what about me? And you know what? When I started with often the dissatisfaction in our relationships are not because the other person isn't meeting our wants and needs, but we're not meeting our own needs. Okay, we're busy chasing after our wants and not looking after our needs. This is such an overused post on Instagram, but it couldn't be truer. One of the most common causes of arguments is people not eating. And so getting hangry. It's so common. So many of us have lives which are set up in such a way that the eating and sleeping is not regulated. Okay? And so the mind is busy with what about me, because you've not given yourself the basic things it needs. In a society where we've got more food than we need. What does that tell us? It means there's something wrong with our own mind, doesn't it? If you're in a situation where in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, everything you need is around you and you're still not giving it to yourself, that is a decision you've made for yourself. You have prioritized a want over your need. Some problem and the solution to that problem, which both are false, by the way, have become so important to you, you have chosen not to meet your basic needs. I'm speaking to everybody who skips breakfast, everybody who eats lunch at their office desk or their study desk, everybody who grabs a bowl of cereal because they can't be bothered to cook, okay? or fans of, these protein drinks and ready-made meals in one. People have leveraged the fact that, people have become so absorbed in chasing after a dream that's never going to manifest. They've stopped eating. Let's sell something to them, a solution to their problem, right? What happens? Someone's always there to take advantage of us when we don't meet our own needs. Okay? So he goes on to say the mind, and this is in the Bhagavatam, the mind is the root cause of lust, anger, pride, greed, lamentation, illusion, and fear. Combined, these constitute bondage to fruitive activity. Fruitive activity is want. That's all it is. What learned man or woman would put faith in the mind? We put faith in our mind 24/7. When a feeling comes up for you, do you trust it as truth? Yes, you say, this is my truth. Yes, when a thought comes up to you, comes out of your mind, you go, I want this. Really? Which you wants it? Which you? Out of those 4 yous, which one wants it? Do those 4 yous ever dialogue? Do you ever sit and think about? So do you see what I'm coming from? So we put so much trust in this mind, even when we don't understand it as a mind in itself, and we don't understand our own mind. If we don't understand our own mind, we cannot get it to a place where it is supposed to do what it's designed for. Because the mind's actually designed to help us actually reconnect. Because it's a two-way bridge. Bridges have 2 sides. Okay, the mind has two aspects. Looking outwards, bahirmukhya, and then antarmukhya, looking inwards, right? Facing outwards, facing inwards. Because the mind, when we are covered by human psychology, human vulnerabilities, human needs, human desires, human frustrations, the mind is clouded, covered, busy. We have no time to receive, no space to receive. When the mind is illuminated by divine psychology, it is clear, and we can walk that bridge to understand our divine self. Okay? So what learned man would put faith in the mind? The learned man who has understood their own mind. Okay? So when it comes to understanding and distinguishing between needs versus wants, we want to distinguish between our physiological needs, psychological needs, and social needs, but also look at the overlay of wants and where those wants came from. So I want to ask you one more question before we wrap up with the last couple of slides, and this is something I want you to do in pairs. I want you to actually look at a relationship you currently have. So specifically a relationship, because I was asked to do this session to help people with something which I think we're probably struggling with more than we have at any other time in history, and that is human relationships on a home front. Okay? Human relationships on a home front are completely fragmented. You can blame it on whatever you want. Generation gap, the modernization of technology, poor diets, poor sleep routines, they're all connected. Okay? People not knowing what their purpose in life is, people not being matched properly to their partner. You can blame it on so many different things. Trauma, abuse, so many different things. But fundamentally, it comes down to people mismatching their needs and wants for themselves. Satisfaction of the soul is a need. Eating is a need, sleeping is a need, safety is a need, self-esteem is a need, self-actualization is a need. What is the overlay? So I would like you to turn to each other and You don't have to pick the most frustrating relationship if you're not comfortable. You can pick something else where you feel there's a little bit of a mismatch, there's a lack of communication, maybe there's some sort of breakdown. And what I want you to analyze in that is, what is the unmet need or want that you want the other person to be fulfilling for you, and where are you falling short fulfilling that for yourself? Okay, because when we look at the circle of influence or control, people who are happiest can distinguish between what's under my influence and what is outside of it. Okay, so I'd like you to sit and talk together with the same person from before or a different person, it doesn't matter, and just identify a relationship issue where you feel you have an unmet need, and from that work backwards and see how you can meet that need for yourself. Okay, and it may start as a want, but yeah, you can change partners or stay with the same one, it doesn't matter.
We just connected something. So it's just been like this conversation.
Okay. You know, the wonderful thing about community is that we've always got people we can share with. And through that sharing, we can release and we can grow. Sometimes it takes constructive questions to do that. I hope these constructive questions are not just, you know, for now. I hope that you've all got talking to someone that actually you'd feel comfortable reconnecting with afterwards. You know, relationships are the foundation of spiritual success as well as our human success. So who'd like to share? Can we send the mic to the back? Thank you.
Hello. Can you hear me? Oh, okay, fine.
You'll have
Okay.
to hold two mics.
Okay.
Let me clip it too. Do you want to clip it?
Okay. So, this is I think, a classic household debate that wife does X amount of things, husband
Sorry,
sees...
can I just ask the audience members to stop speaking so we can hear properly? Yes,
Sorry.
go ahead.
So wife does X amount of things in the house,
Mm-hmm.
and husband sees X amount of things in the house. They may be different, and they're both trying to understand what each other values, and they both have different points of view about what's important and what's valuable in their circumstance. And so they disagree on what should be done and what hasn't been done, and how to communicate about it.
Okay, are you talking about someone else's conflict, or are you just talking general principles?
General household life.
Okay, I specifically asked, the exercise was to think of a relationship you are in right now which is challenging because of an imbalance of needs and wants. So anybody else like to share? Go ahead. I mean, the general principles are very, very useful, but when we personalize it, it leads to more growth. Who'd like to share? Yeah, oh, brilliant.
We had a very good conversation about. Conversation about the different generations and the wants and the desires, the expectations and the conflicts that can arise. So I spoke about me and my son, and he's a teenager. And he can be quite selfish, whereas I'm quite selfless. So there's a conflict there. Where my wife is the good cop, I'm the bad cop. And I'm fine with that. And I need to see things more from his perspective. And he definitely needs to see things more from my perspective. And my partner, my...
So a partner also just means the person you work
Yeah,
with.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
fine.
Yeah, my partner in crime, I'll say, yeah. Very similar experiences between her and her father. And this gap between the generations and thinking and experiences can lead to differences in wants and needs.
Or even perceived
Oh,
needs,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
As we were hearing in the earlier example, both the mother and the son had a need to have their way of feeling satisfied, appreciated and understood. But they're not making time to understand that need, but the need's the same. When you said I'm selfless, my son's selfish, I was wondering, have you asked your son what he thinks when you say you're selfless?
He's not here. He did attend Advanti Court, but he's...
No, I'm not asking literally, I'm like here now, I'm saying just generally. It's just something to reflect on, because how we perceive ourselves is not always how our teenagers see us.
I'll ask him, but I'm pretty sure he would say I'm quite selfless.
Okay.
Yeah. I do go out of my way.
Would he say that he's selfish?
No, he thinks he's always right. He thinks he's perfect.
So the need to be understood.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else want to share anything? We're hoping for people to also work backwards and just see how they can fulfill that particular need for themselves. Something that, just see at the front. Brilliant. Thank you.
Hi, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So the example that I wanted to give is kind of on the flip of what the Prabhu was saying. So my relationship is with my parents, and the conflict arises is when I'm concerned about their health and they don't take what I'm saying seriously because I'm always the child. So I'm not a child anymore, obviously, but to them, I'm always the young person. Like, what do you know? I'm like, stop eating the chevda, like stop eating the peanuts and all these things. Exercise more, have some protein. And they're like, what do you know? My whole family's done it this way. So there's a conflict there, but I want what's well for them, and they don't really see it like that. So that is it, I guess.
And so what's your need there?
I just want them to be well and be around for a long time.
Okay, so you want them to be around for a long time. You want them to be well so they're around for a long time. You have a need to keep them in your life.
Stability, I guess.
Yes, okay. What does that fulfill in you? Let's work this one completely backwards, because, it looks like, oh, that's so selfless, you want to protect your parents. But there's a gain in there for you as well. You want to keep them around for a long time for yourself as well, yes?
Yeah, I guess I don't want them to be...
There's no point in denying that.
No,
it's not a
course.
criticism. It's just, there's so many things that we desire from one outcome, and we sometimes just focus on one motive and we ignore all the others. Of course you want to love and protect them, right? You have a need to love and protect them. That's part of a loving relationship. But you also want them to be there because they are part of your life and you feel satisfied having them in your life. You don't want to be left without them, right?
Yeah, it's, like I find it hard seeing them, like my memory of them is they were strong when I was young and they're getting weaker and older, more fragile. So I find it hard to come to terms with that. I know in my head that this is life, this is how it's supposed to be. But when you see that, you're like, oh, like my dad's got arthritis in his hands now, he can't grip things. I'm just like, he used to be so strong. So things are changing and it's just coming to grips with those kind of things. I find that difficult. And I'm like, there's things you can do to help yourself, but they're like, well, this is generationally, we haven't done anything like that. So why should we change now? So it's kind of hard to communicate that with them.
But this is very much speaking to your need for love and community, right? Because so much of our sense of love and community comes from our parents, our family, and time takes them away. Our frustration with the fact that time takes them away means that frustration ends up speaking, means it affects our language, and we communicate a caring action, request, but in a way that they can't receive. Okay, they're not receiving your care. They're like, no, it's all right, we'll just eat. Whatever, much like a parent might do to their teenager. Eat properly, sleep properly, again, for a similar need. So it's interesting because I think everybody's brought up one of the biggest challenges with relationships is speech. Krishna talks about speech. Austerity, people often think austerity is, thank you so much for sharing, it's been really helpful. So austerity is often perceived as restriction, isn't it? Austerity, immediately we hear the word austerity, or not enough, restriction, but actually austerity is simply regulation according to a gold standard. Because Krishna gives us this gold standard. This is like the secret to good relationships. Austerity of speech, so regulation of speech to the highest standard, okay, consists in speaking words that are truthful, pleasing, beneficial, and not agitating to others, and also in regularly reciting Vedic literature. Now, all of us who've brought up different examples of difficult relationships where we're thinking, hang on, what I'm communicating is it's in your best interest or my best interest. It's not unreasonable. I'm caring, I'm loving. But that is married with our frustration, which is born of lust, selfish desire. What about me? But when it's not, or if we want to curtail it, Krishna says, think about your speech, okay? You can speak the truth, but make sure it's pleasing, make sure it's beneficial, and that it's not going to be agitating. Now, you'll go, okay, well, hang on, it's not in my hands whether the other person's agitated or not. But if it's truthful, pleasing, and beneficial, that immediately lowers the chances of the other person getting agitated, okay? And then the agitating others also implies you're not choosing words that are agitating. Does that make sense? You know, sometimes we feel we're speaking our truth and we have a right to speak our truth, but we're not careful about our tone, we're not careful about the language we use, and we're more caught up in my truth, my needs, my wants, and they're important because it's all about caring about you anyway, right? I'm as guilty as anyone else, all right? I'm speaking these things because I know my ear is closest to my mouth, okay? So I have to hear these things first, you know? I speak about these things because I want to be better at them, not because I'm an expert. But Krishna really gives us the perfect way to manage problems in miscommunication in relationships. You don't have to wait until everything's sorted to speak as if everything's sorted. Does that make sense? This is humility in action. We often have this sense that, oh, when everything's more peaceful, then I'll speak in a peaceful way. When everything's more peaceful, I will speak more pleasing words. I'll try not to be agitating. But try doing this in an agitating situation. You will de-escalate it, and actually more than de-escalate it, you will please Krishna. You'll be satisfying your body, your mind, your social situation, and your soul. Why? Because you're taking the advice of the Supreme Personality of love and relationships. That's what Krishna is all about. That's what spiritual life is all about. It's about reconnecting with our most essential relationship. But, you know, to make the mind peaceful in order to be able to do this takes more than just understanding the mind. It takes more than just coaching. It takes more than just, you know, asking ourselves the right questions. When I say it takes more than this, because we are more than the mind. Okay, we are more than what society says. We are more than this physiology. In Bhagavad Gita in 266, Krishna says one who is not connected with divinity can have neither transcendental intelligence nor a steady mind, without which there is no possibility of peace. And how can there be any happiness without peace? All of our wants, which are overlaid on top of our needs, they're all in the pursuit of happiness. And yet they make us miserable. And they make us miserable because our mind is not steady and it's not peaceful. So whilst understanding the mind through proper questioning, through proper speech, through self-reflection, through eating properly, sleeping properly, through being engaged in purposeful activity is extremely important. In addition to that, so we don't have to give all of that up. In addition to that, we must connect with divinity. Why? Come back to that same thing of the mind being outward-facing and inward-facing. When it's outward-facing, it's agitated because it's governed by the 6 enemies of the mind. It thrives on protecting the temporary ego, which is always vulnerable. So the outward-looking mind is always governed by fear. Protect, 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 protect. I might lose. Okay, I might not get this. I might lose what I already have. Okay, so the human psychology is set up to protect the temporary sense of self. That's why these 6, enemies we talk about, they have we find them delicious. right? We find this, when we talk about envy, greed, lust, anger, all of these things, we try and make excuses for why we need them in our life. Oh yeah, it's a dog-eat-dog world out there. If I don't connect with, if I don't compete on the same platform as others, or if I don't connect with my anger, I'll never speak my truth. We hold on to these things thinking that they're necessary. They're only necessary for the human existence to the degree that we think we need to be human. Srila Prabhupada's very clear. He said, you don't need a material body. You just think you do. That's why you have one. That's deep. That's something really worth unpacking. So when we connect with divinity, however, that permanent, essential, natural self that's eternally wise and blissfully connected, that lives in love and is completely secure, that illuminates the mind. It makes this mind steady and peaceful. And it's also, these mantras we chant, the Maha Mantra, the Japa, it all seems on the surface so simplistic, but it's so powerful. Water is so simple, it can save your life. The Maha Mantra is just 3 words. It saves your eternal life. Why? Because it brings to life the real self. And the real self illuminates the mind and pushes out those enemies, those debilitating thoughts in a way that no practical exercise can do, okay? No tablet can do, okay? No other method can do, but that doesn't mean it's an instead of. That is not what we've got to say and, because what happens is, more often than not, I meet 2 types of people. These are the 2 most common combinations. Either people have thrown away all their human activities and only taken to spiritual activities, and then they neglect their human needs, and before they know it, the spiritual activities become difficult. Or they've gone the other way, where they're just ignoring their spiritual nourishment because their human needs have become such, have started to feel so urgent because they're rooted in fear that they've ignored nourishing their actual essential self. So when we're looking at this topic of distinguishing wants versus needs, the first thing you've got to ask yourself is this universal and essential? As well as Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the most universal and essential need is the need to connect with divinity. Because our sense of identities come alive based on who we connect with. You're a mother when you connect with your children. You're a partner when you connect with your partner. You're a child when you connect with your parents. You're an employee when you connect with your boss. The minute you lose that connection, you stop living in that identity. We live in spirit, soul, consciousness when we connect with divinity. So really, spiritual practice is about recovering, okay? Recovering our essential self, because our essential self drives everything else. Imagine having a mind that is not just peaceful, but illuminated with the confidence that no harm will come to me. Imagine living with a mind that is illuminated with the confidence that I'm always loved. Imagine living with a mind that is illuminated with I have access to all knowledge and I'm blissfully connected. That kind of mind can't be agitated by anyone. That kind of, when you carry around a mind like that, not only are you peaceful in your relationships, you communicate effectively, okay? And as your needs are met, other people's needs are also met with much more ease. When we look at the kings of yore who lived in God consciousness, in divine consciousness, it describes in Shastra how their kingdoms were wanting of nothing, and their kingdoms were accustomed to having full opportunity to develop their spiritual self because they had no material needs. Because the material needs had been delivered in such a way that they also satisfy their spiritual needs. So when we become spiritual warriors within our own families, within our own communities, what does a spiritual warrior do? They conquer their own mind. They conquer their own mind by connecting with divinity and following divinity's advice, performing austerity of speech, understanding the nature of the mind, okay? Allowing themselves to work in an antimatter way. It is a fact that the divine way of thinking and being is different and in opposition to the current human way of thinking and being. If you feel like an outcast, that's great, you're doing well. Because in current society, being humble is frowned upon. Of course it would be if you're living in fear. But when you're living in abundance, humility comes naturally. Okay? So when you're trying to distinguish, first ask yourself, is this a need? Is this universal? Okay? Secondly, I've identified the need. Where did the overlay of the wants come from? And what's the degree of desire? Just by doing that, it will start to weaken the hold that the want comes from. Because when you start to see where that want comes from, you can change what you expose yourself to. And the minute you stop exposing yourself to the reminder that you need to have this, you will lose taste, you will lose interest in it. Out of sight, out of mind. It is as easy as that, especially when it comes to material things. Does that make sense? So I would like to end with, and I know I've gone over time and I'm very sorry, I would like 3 people to just give me one sentence which is like something they're going to take away from today's session. Gentleman at the back.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Literally the last line that you just said, when you live in abundance, humility comes naturally.
Yes. Thank you. When we live in abundance, humility comes naturally. Please remember, I'm not talking about just being rich. Okay? Abundance is a mindset. It's a spiritual mindset. Anyone else?
I especially love the sentence you said that was, you cannot desire something you're not exposed to.
Yes. We cannot desire something we're not exposed to. Thank you. One more. Make time for divinity. Thank you so much. What a beautiful note to end on. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me back. Hare Krishna. Can we take a couple of questions, Prashant, if there are any? Are there any questions, or did the discussion satisfy your need for the questions? Because I know there's some discussion. If there are, we can take. Otherwise, we can break for Prashant.
I'll ask one.
Okay, go ahead. Okay.
You mentioned that there's
and then there's a gentleman over there.
you mentioned that there's different types of wealth. So what were the other types of wealth that you're referring to?
So when we look at Lakshmi Devi is the presiding personality of fortune, right? Good fortune. When we look at wealth, people often talk about wealth as money. But there's so many other things when we're talking about this concept of abundance, because any opulence is a type of wealth. Lakshmi Devi can give any type of wealth. You know, like I was saying, that finances are the most inferior type. There is the wealth of knowledge, yes? There is the wealth of fame, there is the wealth of beauty, there is the wealth of renunciation, or the opulence of strength. But ultimately, the highest wealth that she represents is the wealth of spiritual realization and devotion, because she is one of the topmost devotees, Lakshmi Devi. So actually, when often in astrological charts, people will ask the astrologer, when will good fortune be bestowed upon me? Right? A chart will often, and a good astrologer will tell you when are your periods of austerity and testing, and when are your periods of abundance and good fortune. We can, by changing our prayer, we can change our karma. Without changing the planets, you can change your karma. How? By praying to Krishna, I have this period of good fortune coming. Love and devotion to you is the source from which all other types of wealth sprout. Allow me to actually receive the wealth of devotion to you. Now you may be sitting there thinking, I don't have that kind of faith yet. I don't have that kind of surrender yet. That's okay. Our prayer can be, allow me to develop that kind of faith and understanding, that I can fully understand that from devotion and reconnection sprouts every other type of wealth. Not because I want that type of wealth, because ultimately I want that devotion to override. But we go in baby steps. Sometimes we try to jump immediately to the highest prayer. And then it leaves us with lots of unmet needs. There's so many different types of wealth, but when we aspire for the wealth that is naturally our inheritance, which is love of divinity, then everything else follows. Spiritual realization does not follow material acquisition. Material acquisition can really easily follow spiritual realization. Krishna, we often hear that Krishna takes away when he really is merciful towards a devotee. Prabhupada explains this in a bit more detail, based on a verse in the Bhagavatam where it says that when someone is too materialistic, when a devotee is too materialistic about a particular thing, Krishna takes it away because he sees what an impediment it's causing. So it's not that, only that devotee who's lost everything has had mercy put upon them. It's whatever we've invested and made our everything is what Krishna will take away from us. Especially the more sincere we are with actually, I really want to take the fast track to you. So yeah, have an analysis of which types of wealth you put so much emphasis on and see if you can distill it to its purest form. Gentleman there?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So how do we avoid conflict and disagreements with, let's say, family members or, is there sort of any sort of advice, please?
We don't want to avoid conflict because conflict is, simply put, it's just a disagreement. Disagreements will always be there. We're living in that kind of world. Like we said, needs are universal, but wants are very different. So there'll always be a disagreement. See, one of the things about becoming a selfless, trying to become a brave, selfless and humble person is that other people's, and especially those we care about, this dialogue of what about you, it already brings to mind what are the needs of others. And when we fulfill their needs, often their wants are very little. So how do we avoid conflict? We preempt. Our service can be to preempt, just like parents preempt for their kids what they might need without the child asking. So we can do that for ourselves and for other people. The other thing is we can also, is the battery dying?
Yeah, I think you can use this one. Let's just take this.
I'll just hold it because we're wrapping up. Thank you. We can also create communities, relationships and families where there's permission to disagree, right? So if there's permission to disagree, that you're allowed to have a difference of opinion, acknowledge each other's differences and see if you can find a common ground, right? This is spiritual conflict resolution is not about winning or losing, it's about winning and winning. Right? How can we turn this disagreement into a win-win? Ramnath Maharaj said something really wonderful. We spent some time with him in America and he had this undercurrent of the same message for the entire week that we were with him. And it was around Bhakti-tirtha Maharaj's 20th Tirabhav. And he was explaining how disagreements will always happen. It's inevitable. And he said, and there's no problem with that because every way of doing something benefits someone and someone doesn't benefit. That's just a fact. There's no way of doing something that benefits everyone. The best we can get is the benefiting the most people most of the time, right? When we're talking about human dynamics, because conflicts are usually over human dynamics. He said, but disagree nicely. And this is what Krishna is talking about with the austerity of speech. My truth, your truth, relative truth. Krishna says this to Uddhav. All of these truths, they're as good as each other because everybody's got their perspective and their way of looking at things. But we don't disagree in a way that causes harm through speech, through thought, or through action. So we can't avoid conflict. Sometimes people feel like, I can feel the frustration in your question that, gosh, it would just be easier if there was no conflict. But the conflict isn't so much the disagreement, it's the uncomfortable feelings that arise when people don't communicate effectively. And we stop communicating effectively when we lose trust. So if we keep channels of communication open that you are allowed to disagree with me, it keeps trust and it builds trust. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does, yeah.
Okay.
I guess it's, if two people have a disagreement, they both think they're right.
Yes.
So no one wants to back down.
So can both be, then both can be right. Why not? Why is that not an option? We're both right. Why is it that to be right, for me to be right, you have to be wrong?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you see what I mean? Why can't we both be right? It could be done that way and it can be done that way. Today, which one are we going to pick? Next time, it'll be your turn. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay, I think we should stop there. Or one more? Okay, yeah, sure, I don't mind.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Sangeet.
Thank
How are you?
Yeah, doing okay. Lovely to have you here in Houston.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, there was something that stood out to me, which was kind of maybe understanding the root, and that's the attachment that you mentioned. And I guess maybe the question is, how can we make sure that we're, being attached to the right thing, or how can we develop attachment for the right things?
Or for the best things?
Yes.
What we expose ourselves to, we will become attached to.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if we develop attachment, human attachment, just by contemplating the objects of the senses, when we contemplate the objects of the soul, we develop spiritual attachment. So the more the mind is a sponge with many layers. And what happens with a sponge? Whatever you steep it in, it will soak up. The longer you steep it in that, the more it'll soak up. Okay? And the mind has got some impressions from so many lifetimes. And even if you don't accept it's from so many lifetimes, even this lifetime, do you know how many experiences we've had? Do you know how many thoughts and feelings we've had? Do you know how many things we've been exposed to? All of those are sitting there in the subconscious and unconscious mind. Only a little bit of it is available in the conscious mind, right? And all of that is acting in the background like the operating system of a computer. Right, codifying, decodifying, acting as a filter. And it takes so much effort just to understand a few aspects of our current mind. However, as we create new impressions, expose ourselves to new things, old ones get pushed out or diluted, because it's all about repetition. The longer that mind sits exposed to something, the deeper that desire forms. So the more we hear sounds, words, look at images, engage in activities that are related to things that are nourishing to the soul, not just by activity, but by changing the motives of our day-to-day life. So instead of ordinary food, we eat prasadam, right? Instead of cooking just for our gut, we cook for Krishna, right? Instead of working just for the paycheck, we also work in a mood that, how might I please Krishna? Or if I was at my best, how would I do this? As we do that, those spiritual impressions replace the material ones. And then the only thing that starts to come up in our human mind is spiritual thought. And then the gateways to our soul open up. So change your exposure. The best thing, change your exposure. The best thing that tames the mind is mantra, right? Sound. Our mind is changed most powerfully by sound, not just images we look at, not things that we just say, but actually what we hear. Okay, and actually what we say is what we hear. So when we change our words, we also change what we hear. What we say about ourselves changes what we hear. What we think about ourselves doesn't have as much impact, but what we say about ourselves has a deep impact. So change what you expose yourselves to. So thank you again, and I think it's Kirtan or Prasadam. I'll hand over to the MC. Yes. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.